We're going to start off with a brief candidate introduction. I'm going to ask that you please keep it to 2 minutes if possible. I want to just give us a little bit about your background, your experience, and why you are seeking office. I'm going to first, we're going to be talking to our candidate, Ms. Angela Roberts. The other candidate appears we will bring them in, but this time all my questions will be directed to you, Ms. Roberts. So Ms. Roberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. So my name is Angela Roberts. I'm a mom of 3 children. My youngest son has autism. I am a legal professional for the last 10 years in legal transcription and paralegal. I'm a court-appointed special advocate, which is a CASA. I've done that for a little over 4 years now. I just feel like our government should work the way that our families do, responsibly and with accountability. I was raised that if you have a complaint, you should also have a solution, so I would like to be that solution.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts, for that brief introduction. We're going to start off with the question. And these are going to be my rapid questions, and these are going to be just basically 1 or 2 word answers. It's just 3 questions. And the first question being, we know that the last person who was in the seat left and resigned without completing the term. Would you make the commitment, if elected, that you will complete the term?
Absolutely.
Full term?
Absolutely.
The next question is one of Reverend Anderson's favorite, deals with blight and signs and things of that nature that you put up in campaign. Will you make a commitment at this time to remove all your campaign signage within 30 days after the election results?
I will plan to remove them within the week, if not days, after. We have a whole team, and I'm sure we are all committed to picking up on
Look,
stuff.
her team is tired. We'll talk about it.
I mean, we can get it together.
We'll get it done.
Okay.
We got you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Thank you, Chief.
Crystal Ellis is my campaign manager. I know she's exhausted, but we have a vast team. I'm sure we can pick them up.
Okay, thank you.
I felt her cringe over there when I said a week.
We know that District 69 is now becoming increasingly diverse for some of the population change. We know that the residents speak different languages and we have different type community members moving in. So we're going to ask at this time, with the language barriers sometimes being difficult in other forms of languages, do you have any, you or do anyone on your team speak any other language like English as a primary or sign language?
Poquito Espanol,
Oh.
and then I believe Maggie Pinero and Caitlin are both fluent. I know Caitlin Joshua is fluent, and then Maggie Pinero, I believe, is as well. She told me at least that she does.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roberts, thank you, Ms. Honesty. Okay, the next question is going to be a little bit tougher. It's going to be more about some of your ideals and beliefs and some of your motivations for being a representative for District 69. First question is going to be, we know that coming this May 2026, that voters will consider a constitutional amendment that would grant the St. George Community School System the same authority as parish school systems, including authority related to funding and the minimum foundation program. What is your position on this amendment, and what do you believe its long-term impact would be on public education in these federal schools?
So my position has always been that whatever decision we make has to be thoroughly assessed for impact. It's not good enough for me that the impact be, oh, it's 51% positive and 49% negative, but we're going to do it anyway because 51 outweighs 49. I think it has to show massive positive impact and be thoroughly assessed and not done in haste in order for us to make any decisions like that. I'm pro-voters deciding what they want, but I hope that they will make their decision based on thorough assessment.
Okay, question 2. We're going to talk about your vision in the first year product, with safety being a big thing for District 69 as is for our city. I'm going to ask that, what are your top 3 legislative priorities that you realistically believe you could begin advancing in your first year of office?
The top priority I would have is early intervention and education in our schools. Infrastructure is a huge one, our drainage and roads, all the things that we have to deal with daily, these are all nonpartisan issues. And then insurance, and I think insurance ties back into the infrastructure. Once we're mitigating those risks, we're mitigating the insurance risk.
You were saying insurance for the parish or insurance for the residents?
I was particularly talking about home insurance, but I know that it's really a problem for our families overall, and auto insurance and home insurance, you name it. So we've got instability and affordability as an issue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roberts. Okay, next question. We know that at the federal level, in the United States right now, there is significant talk about reducing FEMA or shifting more disaster recovery costs to the states. We know that Louisiana, besides having good food and good music, we know that Louisiana is one of the most disaster-prone states in the country. How should Louisiana respond if federal disaster support is reduced? And what role should state legislators play in addressing it?
To be honest, like you said, we're not high on board in a lot of things. I am not entirely sure what we could do, but I know that I'm committed to finding the answers and making the assessments to bring that answer back to you.
Okay, and when you say finding the answers, you mean finding the answers to fill the hole in the budget to help support FEMA, or do you mean finding answers to try to help with insurance rates and other costs to help protect the citizens?
Both of those, I mean, both things.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that we should make database decisions.
Okay. Based on scenarios, based on situations, or based on majority rule?
I think we should assess our budget, assess our situation, make data fact-based decisions.
Okay. Okay, back to public safety. Public safety continues to dominate policy discussions, especially in Louisiana. We know that recent reports have examined the negative financial and social impacts of some of the rollbacks when it comes to previous criminal justice reforms which were in place. As a legislator, what public safety strategies would you prioritize, and how would you balance that with the accountability and cost?
I think that prevention is the number one step that you take. I'm sorry, ask a question one more time.
Okay, when it's, as a legislator, what public safety strategy would you prioritize?
I think prevention is the number one safety measure that you can take. I think if we are working on prevention and mental health and stability and affordability, that's how we're going to manage our safety.
Okay, follow-up question. So when you say prevention, are you saying crime prevention or high incarceration rate prevention?
Same. So I think that there's a multitude of factors that contribute to crime. You know, we're coming out of prison. Prison systems, for example, first. I know that not everybody's coming out of prison systems when they're committing crime. We're coming out of prison systems into instability, into job instability, into affordability crisis. These are things that are contributing to the reoffender rate. Then we have people who are not coming out of prison, but the crime rate is still increasing nonetheless with new offenders or offenders that are just at fault. I think that the way that we mitigate that is that we treat situations that are causing crime to begin with.
Okay.
That is the answer you were
So
looking
you're
for. I'm
saying,
not sure.
yes, ma'am. So
We have mental health issues. We have affordability issues. You know, people don't just wake up, and most people don't just wake up and decide to commit crime. There's usually some kind of factor that leads up to that.
So you're saying address the mental health, address the lack of jobs,
Yeah.
address the lack of training and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay.
And that ties all back into education as well.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. So question 5 is going to be, we know that this is a special election because of the vacancy. We know that by the time this election is over and the candidate who wins is sworn in, we know that the general session would have already began. And we know that the pre-filing date for any types of bill or legislation which may be entered would have passed. So with that in mind, despite those limitations, how would you ensure that the concerns of District 69 are meaningfully represented during this conversation?
I don't want to be someone who gets elected and then forgets the people who elected me. I want to make it a pillar of otherwise, I mean, as we've seen recently, people kind of just transparently telling us what we're doing, what they're doing wrong to us. So I intend to be accessible to people, and I intend, win or lose, to run again next year, because I want to be a voice for all people.
So you're saying have regular town halls, listen to the people. You committed to that?
I'm committed.
Okay.
Promise.
Promise.
I'm here.
Okay, we know that besides the regular sessions that our legislature have, we know that we watched in the past year, or so, a number of special sessions that they call. And so we know that Louisiana has increasingly relied on these special sessions. And do you believe that this trend reflects positive, responsible governance, or why not?
So what is it?
Do you believe that the calling of the special sessions, as many as we have had, you think that reflects on positive governance, cost effectiveness, why not?
Can we name one in particular? I have recent in mind, but you name one in particular.
No, we had three last year. We had the one dealing with the Constitution, and then we had the regular session, then we had the one dealing with some of the amendments that didn't pass on the ballot.
Are we talking about, the recess and drive, those amendments?
Yes.
Okay.
So, we, as I said, we know that the governor has the power to call a special session, saying that we have to get something.
Right.
But we know that when this happens, it's a high cost
Right, it's a burden
on the
upon people.
taxpayer.
Right, it's a burden upon
And
people.
things of that nature. So I'm saying, as a legislator, would this be something you would support, or would this be something
I
you
think
would
this
question?
goes back to what we were saying before about assessment for positive impact.
Yes.
I agree with you that it's a bit irresponsible to constantly throw us into special session. I think that we should plan these things around existing elections if possible.
Okay.
We don't want our taxpayers bearing that burden.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay.
I appreciate it too, as a taxpayer.
You're right, exactly. We know that, also, in the news, we heard a lot about the big project going on North Louisiana, Richland, Parish, which is good for jobs because it deals with data center and some of the infrastructure and some of the things which they're building. But we know Louisiana has seen growing interest in large-scale data center development. We know that these projects bring economic opportunities, but they also raise concerns when it comes to the energy use, concerns when it comes to water consumption, keep those needs flowing, when it comes to the infrastructure strain that it has on the land and the other supporting things around it. So as a candidate, what is your position on regulating new data center development for our state?
I think that circles back into what I've said, is that we have to have a thorough assessment on the impact, but also, I'm sorry, last part, one more time, the new data centers. Oh,
Yes.
so I'm not anti-business, I'm not anti-workforce.
That's good.
Right, I'm not anti-business, I'm not anti-workforce, but we have to assess it and make sure it's gonna be a good plan, and that it's thought out, it's done well, and also the safeguards that are put in place often are put in place by people who benefit from those safeguards not really being checked and balanced. So I think that our safeguards have to be effective and enforceable.
Okay, thank you. The next question is going to deal with the budget gap, which is possible, or which is said, because we know that our state faces a potential of a $500 million budget shortfall. This is due to the expiration of which was a temporary state tax of 0.45% tax, which was in place, which is no longer there. So with that tax not being there, there's a potential $500 million budget shortfall. How would you approach closing this gap? And also, what would you how could you or would you prioritize spending cuts, new revenue, structural reform, or a combination of some different things?
in leading in transparency, I would have to tell you, there's some things I won't have answers for sitting here today
Yes, ma'am.
before we have the facts in front of me.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
commitment is to make sure that I assess those facts and the data, and hear out my people before we make any decisions.
Okay. So you will,
I'm familiar with the cut you're speaking of.
yes, ma'am.
I don't have a direct plan I can put in your hand, but I'm committed to making sure it's assessed and hearing.
I appreciate your honesty. Okay, let's go to question 9 then. This deals with the growing number of the ICE detention centers and facilities which are being built, which is now here in Louisiana, especially up in some of the northern parish, and some of the enforcement activities which come along with that. What is your position on the expansion of immigration detention, especially the privatization of some of these centers in our state?
I am from an area that only has private centers. I am familiar with some of the issues with those. I think that when people are in fear, they hesitate to report, as we should. We should be able to trust our law enforcement and our legislators and the people above us. ICE is a touchy subject. I understand the need for security in that way, and not in border security is what I mean. But also, I am not a fan of our families being in fear. I'm not a fan of our constitutional rights being infringed upon. I don't think that we're handling things the way that we necessarily should, and that we should do things in a way that maintains our rights, everyone's rights, not just us as citizens, maintains everyone's rights, and cuts down on the fear in our public.
Okay. Next question.
I'm sorry, I want to specify that when I say the fear in our public, I mean a fear in our families to be in the public and reach out when something goes wrong. Not fear in our public as in fear of immigrants, I don't mean that.
Okay.
So we're clear.
No, thank you.
I don't want that misconstrued.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Rouse. We know that Louisiana has experienced a troubling number of deaths in our prisons. We know that this includes the prisons, the parish jails, detention facilities, and other places while people are in police custody. We know that these numbers have been growing more in recent months. The legislature has oversight and authority and budget control over many aspects of the correctional system. What actions would you support to address deaths in custody and improve the transparency and accountability for some of these?
First off, I say it's absolutely unacceptable. I'm from Parish, and we've had that issue back home, just the same as I've seen. I mean, how many in the last 2 weeks of, you have to remind me what prison it is, but I see the news articles myself as well. Yes, Hunts, it was Hunts. I'm not a fan of we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing. So I think, if we have to bring in outside agencies to hold people accountable, it's a shame because it's a cost we're gonna have to bear in the one hand, and the other hand though is that we cannot have this continue. So whether it be that we can find a way to make sure that we're thoroughly investigating to maintain true transparency and accountability, I'm committed to working it out.
So you have no problem?
I feel very strongly about it.
You have no problem holding the proper people?
Right. Like I said, I hate that in the one hand we have to bring in another agency to bear the burden of that cost, but at the same time, it's unacceptable that we have deaths in custody.
Okay. So you concentrate more on transparency with the family?
Right. And I think that the human life outweighs the cost, although it still has to be cost effective. I think the human life outweighs the cost of having to bring in another agency to investigate. Like I said, it doesn't sit well with me if we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing.
Okay, I'm going to take a brief moment at this time. I actually asked her 10 questions. She did a great job for answering. But I want to be respectful of the audience time and respectful of audience questions if there are any. So So at this time, I'm going to ask, is there any questions that anyone wants to ask the candidate? Yes, ma'am.
So in touching with the Louisiana prison system, I'm very passionate about it because my only son back in 2016 was wrongfully convicted in New Orleans and received a 10-year sentence. So that's when that, and no one in my family ever been incarcerated, so that's what threw me into the public forum now of finding out about the laws and stuff like that. So one of the things I had brought up to my local state representative, because I live out in St. James Parish, was to get help with getting air conditioning in the prisons. It is horrible. You know, we are here with 110 degrees for the summertime, and there are fans in these dormitories. I think only like in the infirmary or in like the library or something like that. And my son had called me in the middle of the night and said it is so hot in here, he had to take a cold towel and put it on his face. So I even tried to get a meeting with the governor. That wasn't a success. Tried calling the Department of Corrections. Reached out to my state representative, and he came back to tell me that it's federal mandated. So I was like, okay, if it's federal mandated, then who do I need to speak with? I just went around in a circle. Also contacted Promise of Justice Initiative. I think they were doing something with getting the people who worked at Angola, the people who worked the farms and stuff, the outside, with AC for them, you know. So, but I've never heard anything back. So who would I contact in this situation? If you would know that answer.
I don't offhand know the answer of who you would contact. What I
Okay.
can tell you is I've been known to be called the Google friend, is that people reach out to me all the time, and I will bring my same commitment that I have in my personal life into finding those answers into my role as legislature, to make sure that I find those answers and would provide them. And also, I'm sorry that that's happened.
Thank you.
Crystal you look like you raised your hand.
No, I have a question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
But also, I also am aware of the air conditioning issue.
Yes,
that
it
we've had
is
in prison,
terrible.
and it is
It
awful.
is
And
so
I
hot.
want to say that, you know, we have laws against cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes,
And we don't reform people by throwing them into prison and treating them like animals.
exactly.
And
Because there are
the
people
prison
too.
treatment is awful.
It is horrible. And then when you call the Department of Corrections itself, like right now, my son, praise God, he's almost coming home in 4 months. He was supposed to go to work release back in December. Been calling, oh, they haven't signed off the paperwork. They haven't signed off the paperwork. Call the Department of Corrections. So I called the Department of Corrections. What's the inmate's number? That's the first thing they say. I said, can you be more empathetic or sympathetic? This inmate is a son, okay? What's my son's name? They don't care at all. They're horrible. You know, what's the inmate number? And that really upsets me.
And I can tell you, I have loved ones who are incarcerated as well, so
Yeah.
I feel for you deeply and empathize with you. And
Thank
I
you.
agree that we should remember that, you know, again, people who are in prison are not animals. We should treat them with kindness still, but also
Exactly.
that we should treat their families with kindness as well, because their families have not committed a crime, but they still have loved ones
Exactly.
incarcerated.
Yeah, they are terrible.
And like you said your son was wrongfully incarcerated, and
Was
that does happen.
wrongfully-
Our system is not perfect, so.
Exactly, and then I had a paid attorney and everything to try to fight that. Like I said, we were all devastated, me and my whole family was devastated, because no one in my family ever became, you know, was incarcerated, and that's my only child. So you knew, that threw me into a frenzy, but by praying and having my faith, and then joining this organization and others to learn the laws and stuff like that, I've also created an advocacy program for families who have kids that's gone down the wrong path to keep them from going into the system. So some good things there.
I'm proud of you, and thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, a couple of questions. I wanted to see if I could seek clarity on a few things. So with District 69 being as diverse as you stated, outside of who works on your campaign team that may speak a secondary language or have another language outside of English being their first language, are you committed to language justice?
Yes.
Thank you. My second question is, are you willing to meet with organizations such as the Justice and Accountability Center and the East Baton Rouge Prison Reform Coalition once you're elected?
Yes. The same as I am here today, and the same I intend to show up once elected.
My third question, I need you to be very firm on.
Hopefully a little more on time.
Would you agree with me that outside of natural causes, should not happen in a prison system.
I do,
Thank you.
I do, absolutely do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Of course. What is language justice?
That is being committed to reaching your constituents in the language that they speak. One is using like proper pronouns. Language justice comes in various ways, right? And so you have constituents in District 69 where their primary language may not be English, and making sure that you are making yourself and the work that you're doing accessible to those who don't understand English. Also being respectful of the languages, the cultural language that people use aside from the language that they speak.
And I would also like to say that that is something we're currently working on in the campaign and will continue to work on once elected, is that we are actually actively working on not only just translation, but because Quito Espanol, I would like to myself be able to make that video and not just rely solely upon a translator. And in doing so, I've reached out to community members who will help me hone in on the language skills that I do have, so that my communication in that video is not clunky and is clear and transparent.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Demetrius Bradley. I am interested in veterans. We train our guys, we send them out to protect our country, our nation, our state, and sometimes they come home broken. And when they come home broken, sometimes find themselves a justice involved veteran. And our Department of Correction does have cognitive rehabilitation. But because of the training and because of the trauma that the veteran has experienced, are you supportive of legislation that is for cognitive rehabilitation and is veteran focused, rather than just saying, well, we'll just put them in a group with everybody else, because everybody else does not have the same trauma, nor do they have the same experiences. I do understand that PTSD can come from other areas in life, but PTSD from a military or a first responder standpoint is totally different.
Yes.
So how supportive will you be of legislation of such nature?
Well, not to throw his business out there, but this man seated right behind you is my brother, and he is a veteran. So I have a front-hand seat to some of those issues that you're referring to, and obviously, I understand it is a priority to me, and I understand that it's very different. He and I, while having same childhood, have now different backgrounds throughout the circumstances of our life, and so I do have a thorough understanding of the differences, and I do prioritize all mental health.
May I substantiate her stance?
Yes,
She's not going to tell my business, but I will. I am her campaign manager. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. I am also justice impacted, and I am her campaign manager.
Yeah, as I said, I didn't want to tell his business either, but just know that it is close to me beyond so just that I have one single family member. I have a thorough understanding, and I'm the type of person that I would hear from anyone. Like I said, I maintain that I want to be accessible to all, and I do understand the differences you're speaking of.
She's committed to seeking advisement, and what I will say is, in addition to service members that return broken, I think one thing that we need to highlight is oftentimes people like myself come from communities broken before they enlist, because that is a way out of that community, right?
Correct.
And it is not dealt with, and I can speak to that from firsthand experience, is that when you enter into the military, your trauma is not recognized, and you don't have the support systems in place until it manifests in your service. I think that as a service member, as a prior service member, you can attest to that as well. And so working with the Veterans Administration and other legislators to be able to implement policy that protect those who are serving us as enlisted members and those who are returning from services is important. I couldn't stand next to her if it wasn't.
Okay, I want to first say thank you, and thank you, sir, for your service. I too did 6 years of service for my country, and so I know some of the problems and some of the difficulties we face and some of the things we see. And that was actually going to be one of my follow-up questions before I end it. And no, I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm just going to go into it as well. Then I'm going to come right back to you. But the question I was gonna ask, what impactful actions would you have to help alleviate some of the veterans' homelessness and addressing some of the high veteran suicide rate we will see?
Like I said before about when we're talking about crime, is that prevention, particularly mental health in this stance, is the number one way that you address those things. And when we're making these decisions, they have to be truly, I'm gonna use the word enforceable, it's not quite the right word, but we have to have policies and procedures that are actually effective and not just what I like to call optics policies, optic laws. You know, it looks good, it looks like we're doing something, but then it doesn't really work out the way that it should. Committed to making sure that these are not just optic procedures and optic policies, and that we're actually doing something important to prevent suicide rate. I have very close loved ones who have left to suicide, and it affects me daily, and it's very close to home. There was one more you asked, not just about suicide prevention, but I'm passionate about that one, is on homelessness. So, you know, we have made homelessness a crime recently in our country, and you know, we're talking about the most people who cannot be kicked any further down. They're already at the bottom, and we want to just kick them again by, you know, making it a crime and incarcerating homeless people just for having literally nothing. They have nothing, and we kick them when they're at the lowest point. So I think prevention, you know, and that prevention is going to lead, hopefully, to a lessened homeless rate to begin with. So it's something I'm very passionate about. Sorry if I looks like I'm a little shaken, because both of those topics are very personal to me.
Okay, remember, and I appreciate your clarity and your honesty about it. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, representative. As someone, my name is Sharon, actually, someone who works with impacted communities, immigrant and refugee communities, I have a few questions for you. What is your position on local participation in federal immigration enforcement programs such as 287G?
Such as, I'm sorry, what was the one?
What is your position on local participation in federal immigration enforcement programs such as 287G?
Are you familiar with this?
I'm somewhat familiar. As Crystal said, I'm committed to advisement as well. In the stance of the District 69, I am not entirely sure what we could lend to, but again, like I said, I won't give you a dishonest answer and pull something out of thin air if I don't have an answer for you. So then when I tell you that I'm committed to finding an answer, a fact-based answer, that's what I can give you.
We currently have 19 agencies signed on to 287G in the state of Louisiana, city of Baton Rouge. And how will you ensure immigrants and refugee communities feel safe to even report crimes without fear of deportation? Because 287G is also part of that impact.
Right, so that's what we were talking about earlier, in that I feel our families should be safe, and I feel that not being afraid to report is a large contributor of higher crime rate that we have, because if we can't report, then the crime goes undetected and it continues. I am committed to making sure that our families feel safe, all of our families, not just our citizen families, not just, the people that are here, regardless of how they are here, safety is still important to everyone. It is, in my opinion, a human right that you remain safe. So I'm committed to maintaining that. And I don't mean safety as a dog whistle. I mean safety is truly safe, it's truly feel safe, feel at home, because this is our home at this point, whether it's documented or not.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for being here. A lot of issues that are very grassroots to our community have ended up in the legislature, whether it is the demonizing of our librarians, whether it is circumventing the will of the local community in education. And yet, one of the challenges of people who go to the legislature is that they are often very unfamiliar with items that are not in their own backyard, and yet you get to vote on everything that comes out of committee. And so my question is, in what way will you make sure, for instance, that you become educated on what 287G is and what that means to not just District 69, but what it means to the state? working with our librarians in this state who are under the gun, quite frankly, for legislation that is continuing to step into our local communities and taking that right away. Will you commit to working with groups that can help you become educated on that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's, in my mind, that's the only way that this position should be held. If you're uninformed, you should seek those who are experts or close to it to inform you, and hear from your community, be accessible to hear from the community. And as Crystal said earlier, I am committed to advisement.
I have a question,
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
Because along with being your campaign manager, I'm a constituent of District
You are.
69, so you still have to earn my vote.
You're right.
So my question is not, are you committed to meeting with community organizations once you're elected? My question to you is, are you committed to meeting with the organizations prior to Election Day?
Yes, and we have been doing that already. Indivisible Baton Rouge is one of those organizations that we have been meeting with, as well as I have sat with Pulse and heard from Pulse. Actually sat with Pulse the night before last, and that's not limiting to those.
Aside from the ones you've already met with, is there space for you to meet with additional organizations?
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
to
That's
discuss
not
their
limiting to the ones,
concerns?
because I know we can look it up and say Indivisible Baton Rouge has endorsed me, so I'm not just committed to the ones that have endorsed me. I'm committed to meeting with anyone who thinks I need to hear something, or who has a concern, or just providing information. I'm committed to meeting with people. It doesn't have to just be an organization. That can be an individual or an organization.
It's a tough campaign manager.
I like her that way.
She has to earn my vote.
I like her that way.
Call
Can I get your
Hands up.
information before we leave?
My mama, sure.
Okay.
Is there any more questions for the candidate at this time?
You said you had a child that has autism, is that correct?
I do.
I am in the 19th JDC every single day for the most part, and we are increasingly seeing, because we have now decided that 17-year-olds are adults, which they are not, to put them through the adult system. And a fair number of the young people I am seeing are behavioral health children. And I wear the hat of being the Children and Youth Chair of the Louisiana Behavioral Health Advisory Council. And so as a parent of a child with a behavioral health issue, where have you come down on a number of legislations, particularly regarding restraints, seclusion in classrooms that are coming out of the legislature, and particularly the issues around SAMHSA funding as it is coming down?
I can tell you, I personally have had with my own child an issue about excluding from a classroom that is inappropriate exclusion. I think that we can tie a lot, because you're speaking of trying them older. I think we can tie a lot of that back to early education intervention. You know, if sooner we are getting that intervention, the sooner we are identifying, so that we can improve upon the education and improve upon the life transitions and path that these children will have. And you know, like I said, early intervention education is the cornerstone of all of our children, but as a parent of a child who has an IEP and who has autism, it makes a huge difference. We've benefited greatly from the intervention process. So.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I actually have a question about, going back to the data centers and just, I guess, industry as a whole. So a lot of the discussion that has come up with the Meta data center, initially, they were talking about the number of jobs it would bring.
Right.
But when it was actually, when they talked about it, they were like, okay, this is for the construction, but the actual day-to-day, operation of the data center would be people, there was a discussion about not having the qualified applicants in the state to work these data centers. I work in tech, so it's a lot of the things of, people saying that they would have to, basically bring in contractors or something like that. They wouldn't be necessarily helping the people of Richland Parish. You wouldn't be hiring people at Richland Parish. You would have this huge facility that's taking up a lot of water, taking up a lot of energy, raising energy rates across the state. And now there's going to be 2 more in Shreveport, or in Bossier City and all that. So I kind of wonder about like the kind of cost benefit of just allowing the legislature to keep signing off on these data centers, under the promise of jobs. But it doesn't really seem like they're actually, hiring Louisiana, employees, basically. They're using the land, they're using the resources, and it looks good on paper because of the tax write-off, but it's not actually hiring any more people here. So I kind of wonder, like, how do we assess that as legislators and things like that to, say, hey, maybe this doesn't need to happen. Maybe, Louisiana isn't for sale just for the promise of, like, a couple hundred jobs that actually won't show up, so.
So I think we tie that back to making sure that we're thoroughly assessing our decisions before we make them, not making them in haste. Again, 5149 benefit to con is not a good enough answer for me. It has to be quite measurable in order for it to be positive to me. I think if we're heading that way, if it's what we decide upon, then we could also tie that back into workforce readiness, which also starts in schools. Now, and we also have, not everyone's still in school. Some of us are adults in our 20s and 30s and so forth. We still have to have programs for those people who are still getting those head starts or mid starts to tie into our workforce again. So if it's a decision we're going to make, and we need to have workforce readiness improvement regardless. But if it's a decision that we're going to make, we can tie that back into it. But just accept a huge pillar is that we make thorough assessments before we make decisions, and we're transparent and accountable in those decisions.
I have a follow-up question, please.
Yes.
Some of the negative impacts of data centers are the high energy consumption, the high water usage, carbon emissions, local pollution and health risk, e-waste, and land use that typically impact communities that look like me, right? And so my question for you is, you smiling?
I said right, yeah.
And, right?
Right.
So my question for you is, the minimal promise of workforce development and workforce investment, is that worth the long-term risk it puts on a community? Let's assess that in this moment.
Right.
Right?
I would say no.
Is it? We say no.
It's not worth it, no. Well, we already live in Cancer Alley, as it is. Many of us already have chronic health issues. I myself suffers from some amount of autoimmune disease, and who knows where it came from at this point. And that's what the doctors have told me. Who knows where it comes from? But so we already have enough issues as it is with the current industries that we have around. And again, I'm not anti-business. We had this conversation. I'm not anti-business. Not anti our workforce, but I think that we have to be accountable for what these industries contribute to our community beyond just workforce, like we said. So if you're asking me, do I think it's worth it in a health stance and et cetera? No, that's my opinion. But again, if we're going to lead that way, if it comes to the point where we're forced into a position where we have to, I just want to make sure that it's assessed as well as we can.
Another follow-up question. Do you think at the rate that these things are popping up, that there's been enough time to thoroughly assess?
No. I'm not.
What committees do you see yourself trying to get on in the legislature?
That's a very good question. I haven't given that a complete and thorough thought, but I can say some of my personal priorities have been education, early intervention, the way that our families are handled in terms of safety. I want to once again emphasize that when I say safety, I don't use that as a safety dog whistle. I mean true feelings of safety, and mental health, domestic violence, all these things are high priorities for me. But also, I'm not ignoring that we have a fiscal responsibility as well, and somebody's got to figure out the budget around here.
Ways and means. That's what they have.
Yeah. So I can tell you what's important to me, and then we can't pretend like the fiscal is not there.
Go where the money's at.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go necessarily just for the money. Yeah, you have a point, and I know what you mean. But for the rest of the room, when we say go where the money's at, we mean where is the money put where it's inappropriate, and then where can we reallocate it where it should be so we can make real progress and not optical progress like we were talking about.
So what is your position on IJ?
I think that we make these companies pay in, and then we give it all right back to them. And I don't approve of that. I don't approve of making the rich any richer when a large portion of our state is suffering. We're suffering from instability and affordability issues.
Do you think we should tax the rich?
Is this a setup, Crystal? Yes, I think we should tax, absolutely, I think we should tax
I'll leave
them.
it there. Do you think?
No,
we should tax
I think
them?
we should, yeah, I think that they should be appropriately taxed, and I don't think that they should get it returned to them. It could, well, because that's the argument, is that, oh, they are taxed, but then we return it back to them. So, yeah, I think we should tax them, and not just give them a cop-out right after it.
Yeah, I have another question that's not scripted, but we know that Louisiana, especially over the past 9 years, is one of the states who's suffering from a negative population rate. We're losing more people to surrounding states and to other places. You know, me, myself, my 3 oldest daughters, one lives in Oklahoma, one in Florida, another in California. So when it comes to losing, especially our talented young people and things of that nature, and trying to give them any type of incentives for things to stay here and to invest in Louisiana, as a legislator, do you think you could be impactful in that area? And if so, how so?
So, I myself am guilty of having the thought of leaving Louisiana. And then I sat with that plan and said, how do I get older and tell my children when they're adults that I gave up on my home? Number one, what am I gonna eat? But also that I gave up on my home, even though, you know, I'm from Parish. It's dwindling in population rapidly. So everyone does better and they leave and they don't ever come back home. They don't ever come back home, they don't put the money back here. I don't wanna be that person. I wanna be the person that stays for the progress of Louisiana and brings money into Louisiana. And then the second part of your question, because I'm missing part of the answer and not actually the answer. The second part, how do I plan to do so?
Yeah, how do you plan to implement any type of incentives or change to
I
help,
think when we,
make Louisiana more valuable, help make attractable to keep some of the brain drain that's leaving?
I think when we start implementing those things that we've been talking about, education, early education, workforce readiness, you know, not just programs for our young people, but also workforce readiness for those who are in the middle, who are in that, you know, not necessarily a head start, but a mid start, they need a little boost, need some help getting along. I think once we are implementing those programs and those policies and procedures, that's how we keep our people in Louisiana, and even hopefully we will bring people back or bring new people in.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Any more questions for the audience? From the audience, I apologize. Okay, if not, I have 3 more questions I'm going to ask you. These come from some of our community leaders. First one is dealing with immigration, and says Louisiana has immigrant families who contribute to our workforce daily, especially our small businesses, and help with our tax base. What specific policies do you think you can support or bring forth to ensure that the immigrant residents, regardless of status, are treated with respect and have access to due process and basic protections under our state law? Long question.
Yeah, I was trying to keep up all of it. You know, everybody has, in my view, should have the right to feel safe, the right to have a livable wage, the right to feed their family and have a content life. And I think if we are impeding upon that, we're looking at we should be looking at how we're messing up as a people and as a whole. I think that just making sure that all of our families are feeling safe to go out into public, safe to carry out their daily duties is priority.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roberts. With that, this question came from some friends at the Public Defenders Association, and the question is, the 6th Amendment of our Constitution guarantees the right to counsel, to have counsel present. Yet, when it comes to practicability of it all, the Public Defender's Office are drastically underfunded and do not have the necessary resources to give proper representation in a lot of these matters. What steps would you take as a state legislator to ensure public defender offices are adequately resourced to help meet the ethical and constitutional standards?
And I think this goes back to what we were discussing about, you know, we've got to follow the money, find out where the money is inappropriately, and then make sure that we have the money to fund the things that are necessary. And I think also one of the things we can link to this, and it's not gonna solve the public defender end, but we just had this conversation yesterday, actually, that, you know, people use a lot, and Crystal kind of scolded me for saying the word jargon is a legal word, that not everyone knows the answer, you know, what that means. But so, you know, you have the right to represent yourself, and a lot of people don't even know this. We hear it and we don't even know it because we don't know how, because the system has been intentionally set up such that it is hard for normal people. So I think that education and making procedures more transparent, but also, like I said, in following the money and seeing where we can make those fiscal decisions and make sure that people do have access to public defenders, because it's not, the education is not going to happen overnight. Public defenders absolutely have a necessary job, and we need to make sure that people are fairly represented in all aspects.
Okay. Okay, and one of my last questions is gonna be this. We know that a lot of times when people are elected or people get into politics, that sometimes they place their political parties and their political values over that of their common interests of the people in their districts and sometimes of their communities. How can we assure that you will maintain your commitment to your district and to your community over that of your political party's will?
I know we hear the term "I can't be bought" a lot, but it rings true for me. It doesn't too much hurt my feelings if my best friend doesn't agree with me, doesn't like the decision that I made. My commitment is that I want to hear the people that are in my community or in our state as a whole state legislator. I want to actually truly be accessible. And sometimes, you know, the decision that my people want may not be the decision that I want to make, but that's the nature of the job. That's what you're signing on for. You're not signing on for your own self-interest or your best friend and your party's interests. You're signing on for the people and their interests and what they want. So I vow to be accessible and accountable to what the people want, not what I want or what my best friend and my party wants. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to think, you know, us as a party that our goal is to align with each other. That's, I mean, technically the purpose of having the party is that we signal where our alignment is. But I think that it's more important that, you know, sometimes your voters are not your party either. That's true too. It's your community. Once you become that position, it's not, your people are not just the people that voted for you either. So sometimes there's people that didn't vote for you. You still have to represent those people.
Okay. That's going to conclude all the questions I have, but I want to give you a 2-minute, I want to give you a 2-minute opportunity to close out. This is your close, your closing argument, your chance to tell the people and let the people know why we should vote for you and why you're the most equipped to handle the job and be the best candidate.
Okay, well, first off, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank y'all for inviting me. I thoroughly appreciate the ability to speak. And I will say that while this is the first time I've ever ran, I may not be someone who's worked in this district for the last 30 years or advised someone before. I am absolutely committed to hearing from the community, to hearing from those who have more expertise than me, to being open to advisement. I think that's what makes me the best candidate for this, is that I actually will listen, and not just hear you, but also act upon what you told me, what you said, you know, the community expresses their needs. Again, thank you for having me, and that's pretty much my answer.
Okay. But no, I want to thank you for, as I say, taking our time out of your campaign, out of your schedule, out of your knocking on doors and kissing babies to come here and give us a chance to actually hear from you. Yes, ma'am, you have a
Just
question?
have a question because I came in late. What
Okay.
district are you?
69.
Does that represent parts of Baton Rouge?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it's parts of Baton Rouge as well as parts of the newly incorporated St. George.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, take a minute and tell her the boundaries.
Yeah, I can tell you the boundary
Okay.
lines. Okay, so we're running Coursey to here at Goodwood, Government, actually I think it's Government and Goodwood. Blue Bonnet, Jefferson, PQ, back around to Tiger Bend, East Acre, parts of O'Neill, and back to Coursey.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
pretty large.
Is there anything else, Clark?
We want to give you a